Welcome back, horror hunters, crypt creepers and scream queens. It is I, Gavin Tripplehorne, aka Ghoulish Gavin. Now, before we get into the meat of the episode, namely the tragic life of Viktor Crowe's first wife, Constance Trewfall, those who listened to the previous podcast know we have a pressing question that needs, nay must, be answered. I asked you all what I should do with this new unmarked package that arrived a mere week ago. I called, and you most definitely answered. People are listening. Do you hear that, El? Your old man is popular.
Dad? Jesus Christ.
Even some old horror creatives crawled out of the woodwork to help. So, thank you to my old friends, Dawn of the fantastic Dead by Dawn blog, Phil of the VHS Attic YouTube channel, though I still disagree with him about Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. It's a masterpiece, Phil. Get over it. And the glorious horror drag scream queen, Ivana Baitvu, who put the fang in fantastic. And it would be remiss of me if I didn't give a shout-out, because apparently that's what you do, to my new deadheads, at VHS Vixen, at evil_hypnotist, at fangirl frights, at furry fiend, and at last.scene.online. The resounding consensus seemed to be I should open it live on air. So here we are. If I die, I leave everything to Elle, and my VHS tapes to Phil. I have to say, that was a bit of an anticlimax. No new body parts inside the envelope, just an audio cassette tape, namely a TDK D90. For those non-analogue listeners, us oldies used to use these tapes to record songs off the radio or audio shows. Wait, this is new. There's a note inside. Holy shit. Sorry for cursing, but this is incredible. If true. It's also a bloody strange coincidence. I'll read you the note. Dearest Ghoul, I thought this might be of interest. I taped it off the radio back in 1996, a BBC Radio 4 kaleidoscope broadcast featuring an interview with Constance Trewfall. It was her first in more than 30 years and the last time she was ever heard from. Perhaps it will help with your episode. Yours with admiration. It's unsigned. Kaleidoscope 130396, Constance Trewfall, is scrawled in biro on the cassette label. This is one of those holy grail moments. I've read and heard rumours of this interview, but I assumed it had been lost to the analogue waste bin. And weirder still, I received this package before I started writing and recording this episode. The envelope has been sitting on my bookcase in the Home Office all week, unopened. And yet, whoever sent it seemed to know I'd be talking about Constance before I did. Or it's just a huge coincidence. Either way, I'm going to play you the parts I've already recorded, and then we'll listen to this tape together at the end. You'll hear my live reaction. Sorry, I'm going to have to take a moment. I'll leave you in the more than capable hands of past Gavin. In the spring of 1960, Viktor Crowe married the young starlet from his first feature film, Mask of the Vampire, Constance Trewfall. Viktor was 21 and Constance was 19. Viktor saw in her a lightness and brightness he'd been missing his entire life. The young Viktor was confident but introverted, known to disappear into himself when he was writing or thinking about a scene. Constance was able to make him laugh, or would just sit with him while he went off on macabre adventures in his head. They met and fell in love on the Gothic sets of Mask of the Vampire, quickly married and retreated into the Scottish Highlands for their honeymoon, while Viktor wrote his next film, The Grinning Plague. Constance Trewfall was destined to act. The fourth daughter of Stanley and Mary Trewfall, Constance was born on 15th of July 1940 in Blackpool, Lancashire. She grew up in a working-class family. Stanley was a maintenance man at the pleasure beach, and Mary was a cleaner for the many guest houses that lined the seafront. From a young age, Constance knew she wanted to act, and she was in awe of the performers, singers and dancers that would swell the population of Blackpool every summer season. By the mid-1950s, Constance was entering the many holiday beauty contests. It's hard to think of this now, but back then the famed Miss Blackpool competition was a cultural phenomenon. Constance had set her eyes on this much-heralded prize, seeing it as her ticket out of the seasonal seaside town and onto the bright lights of Hollywood. In 1957, a 17-year-old Constance was crowned Miss Blackpool. The judges were not only won over by her flowing blonde hair and emerald green eyes, but also by the pose and grace of this young woman. Her warmth and humour could win over a room in seconds. The following summer, Constance auditioned for theatre roles, but no one would take her seriously. In the eyes of the theatrical world, she was a glamour girl with a northern accent and no training. Her parents supported Constance as best they could, but couldn't afford to send her to drama school, so Constance was stuck as a chorus girl in the South Pier Theatre. But it was during one of their reviews that fate intervened. A talent scout, holidaying in Blackpool, spotted Constance and encouraged her to move to London and audition for roles. He even gave her the number of a landlady that owed him a favour and would give her cheap room and board. So Constance took the leap. With little more than a battered suitcase, Constance travelled to London to realise her dream. The first couple of years were tough, mainly working as a part-time shop assistant, chasing audition after audition, until she landed a role as a background extra for a first-time film director called Viktor Crowe. Mask of the Vampire was on a hectic, short schedule. They only had 4 weeks to film Viktor's ambitious script in a dilapidated country manor turned studio in Surrey. They had already been beset with delays, last-minute script changes, and all the costumes being accidentally sent to Wales. Then, the day before shooting was due to begin, the lead actress, Sylvia March, was offered the role of Lola in a West End production, Lola de Lumière. Sylvia March always saw this B-movie horror as beneath her, and had already had several rows with the young, inexperienced director she'd nicknamed the Czech Pig. She was glad to leave this doomed production behind. Mask of the Vampire was in big trouble, and Julia Regina Humboldt V, who was bankrolling the entire project, was ready to pull the plug. I'll let Viktor tell the next part in another excerpt from Monster Man.
It was a disaster of biblical proportions. I was so close to directing my first feature only to have fate and no leading lady rip it from my hands. We had built this tavern set for a scene in the Bavarian village, and I went there to try and collect my thoughts. The young woman who had been cast as the barmaid was taking a break and saw me. She pretended to pour me a drink from the prop beer barrels so I could drown my sorrows. Soon we were both pretend drunk, singing rude songs about Sylvia March and her eventual theatrical failure. This is what Constance did. She saw someone in pain and used her wit and charm to heal them. In that moment, I knew I had found my Ingrid. Someone capable of taming a savage monster, and someone who knew far too many dirty limericks. I immediately returned to work and announced to a shocked cast and crew that the barmaid Constance Trewfall would be taking over as our leading lady.
The press had a field day with this. Here's a collection of headlines from 1958.
Blackpool beauty cast in gothic shock thriller. Horror on sea, glamour girl to bloodbath. From Pleasure Beach to Picture Palace, Northern Girl's big break.
Also, Sylvia March took great pleasure in taking down both Viktor and Constance during her press tour for Lola de Lumière, labelling Mask of the Vampire a disaster while it was still filming, and Constance as nothing more than a seaside pin-up who got lucky. You have to remember, Constance was only 19. Her family was hundreds of miles away, This was her first time taking on a lead role for an untested writer-director for a fledgling horror studio. This should have been a disaster. But Viktor and Constance used the negativity as fuel to create something shocking and unique. Mask of the Vampire launched both their careers, while Sylvia March's Lola de Lumiere opened to incredibly bad reviews and closed after only 2 months. With the film's success, the fickle press soon changed their tune. Here's a quote from the Evening Standard Review.
Constance Trewfall gives a stunning debut performance as the innocent Ingrid in Viktor Crowe's haunting Mask of the Vampire. This former beauty queen can now take her place alongside Hammer Horror's Hazel Court and Barbara Shelley, and has positioned herself as one of horror's next rising stars.
Blackpool Girl makes good indeed. The success of Mask of the Vampire put both Viktor and Constance on the map. They became British horror cinema's power couple, and their reputation was only cemented by Corvus Call Pictures' follow-up feature only a year later, The Grinning Plague. For this horror, Viktor delved back into his childhood trauma and memories of occupied Czechoslovakia to weave a tale of a travelling, cursed carnival spreading death from village to village in the form of a plague that would leave the victims with a rictus grin, clamping their jaws shut. Unable to eat or drink, the victims would slowly starve to death. Viktor would later explain that this was meant to represent the people that turned a blind eye to the atrocities that took place during the war. The old adage of grin and bear it brought to horrific reality. This would also seem to be Viktor taking a cinematic swipe at his own father's passive complicity during the war. The film built on the Gothic art house storytelling of Mask and dials it up to 11, especially during the big top performances, which were shot like twisted dream sequences. Viktor played the ringmaster both in front of and behind the camera. On screen, his character was the source of the curse, a Jekyll and Hyde type who was charismatic one moment and an uncaged beast the next. Constance portrayed the heroine, Isabella, a trapeze artist forced to perform every night, even though she knew it would spread the curse. Constance gave Isabella nuance and pathos and, much like Viktor's own mother, was the one that finally resisted. If the film was still in circulation and available to watch, the closing scene, that got the film banned in several countries when it was released, would rank high on horror gore lists. In the final reel, Isabella learns that to break the curse, the ringmaster must die. She lures him into the big top with the help of the other performers. The carnival lions, infected by the grinning plague and unfed for days, bare their sharp fangs in menacing smiles. Isabella traps the ringmaster in the lion's cage and is hoisted to freedom on her trapeze. The starved, grinning lions descend on the ringmaster, tearing him limb from limb in a graphic, frenzied attack. With the ringmaster dead, the curse is lifted and the lions feast, fighting over entrails. It was a bloody ending that turned many stomachs and symbolized how war and grief had torn Viktor apart. And it was Constance Trewfall's next and final performance that cemented her as one of horror cinema's all-time greats. Ashes for the Grey Maiden is a hard watch, knowing the fate of Constance Trewfall and the accident during filming that ended her promising career. But her stunning performance as the ghost of Lady Fairfield transcends those tragic events. Viktor wrote his third feature, released in 1961, as a vehicle and a love letter to his wife. Ashes for the Grey Maiden was an inversion of the Gothic romances of Bronte, du Maurier and Hammer Horror. Here, the naive innocent was the male groundskeeper Edwin, played by Viktor, and the aloof love interest is the ghost of the lady of the manor house. Viktor also once again donned the makeup to portray the demonic force that keeps the lady of the house in constant torment. Viktor playfully twisted and bent the Gothic romance tropes with a humour we hadn't seen in his previous work. This was to be Viktor's lightest and funniest film, playing more like Blithe Spirit than Rebecca. Constance helped Viktor shape the story of this doomed romance, and the playful interplay between her Lady Fairfield and the innocent Edwin felt like a peek behind the curtains of her and Viktor's relationship. She brought out the light in him. On the 4th of December 1960, as production on Ashes for the Grey Maiden neared completion, the grand staircase set collapsed during filming. Constance was at the top of the staircase, waiting to descend. It took 8 hours to free her from the wreckage, with Viktor leading the rescue. Several crew members escaped with cuts and scratches, but Constance, having fallen from such a height, shattered 5 vertebrae in her back. She would never walk again. Constance Trewfall had gone from Blackpool beauty queen to Bavarian barmaid to innocent villager to fearless trapeze artist to Gothic ghost to obscurity in only 5 short years. The entertainment industry is cruel, and in the 1960s there weren't many roles for someone confined to a wheelchair. At 21, Constance retired from acting. A few months after the release of Ashes for the Grey Maiden, Viktor and Constance quietly divorced, some say due to an ultimatum from Julia Regina Humboldt V. Viktor went on to release 6 more films, each darker and more twisted than the last. Constance faded from the limelight and was forgotten, another star that burned brightly all too briefly. I'll leave the last word to Constance as Ingrid in Mask of the Vampire.
All you see is a peasant, a human to feast upon and quench your thirst for blood. I hope you choke on my bones, demon. You may take my body, but you will never own my soul.
I think you'll agree that that is a tragic tale. To have so much talent and ambition and have it taken away from you so young. And with the loss of Viktor Crowe's films, no one will get to see the amazing roles Constance played. After the accident, Constance retreated from the spotlight. She would occasionally make an appearance at charity fundraisers for disabled actors, but she refused to talk about her acting career or Viktor. Maybe it was too painful to talk about the past, or maybe she had a seriously frightening non-disclosure agreement with the Humboldts. And Constance passed away 10 years ago, which makes the interview on this tape even more rare and dangerous. The Humboldt Foundation is very litigious. I've heard rumours about this 1996 Kaleidoscope interview with Constance, but thought it was lost to time. Now, as you know, I'm an analogue man, so I have a mint condition Sharp GF777 boombox that's perfect for such a first playing. If this tape is what it says it is, well, Deadheads, we are in for a GGG exclusive. I'm going to react to this live. Here we go. Well, this is disappointing. It seems we've been...
I set up a charity specialising in help and support for actors and crew after workplace accidents.
Oh my God, this is it. It's Constance.
The industry likes to forget about these people and move on. They still have a voice. They still want to make art. I wanted to give them the opportunity that was taken away from me.
Because of your injury?
I'm in a wheelchair, not dead. Look, I'd like to set the record straight, here and now. After the accident, I wanted to carry on working. My husband, Viktor, my ex-husband, Viktor, even started writing a script about a paraplegic nurse who could commune with the dead. It was fantastic. But it didn't fit with the plan.
I'm sorry, whose plan?
I loved Viktor. He was my life. We adjusted to me being in a wheelchair. We adapted. But his patron, Julia Regina Humble V pulled us apart. I was in the way. Distraction. Viktor's mission was too important to be interrupted. I never fully knew what was going on. Viktor was too private. But I saw firsthand how Julia controlled him, manipulated him. She was...
No, please don't.
Gavin, find him.
What the fuck?
Gavin's Graveyard Gold is a Weirdworks production featuring Daniel Carter-Hope as Gavin Tripplehorne, Megan Carter as Elvira Tripplehorne, Jessamy James as Constance Trewfall. Recorded, mixed and edited at 5A Studios. Written and directed by Paul Williams.